The stars had always seemed peaceful to Captain Jake Morrison. He had spent 5 years aboard Sentinel-7, the defense station that orbited Earth, watching the darkness of space with quiet patience. Nothing had ever happened during his watch. Space was empty and silent, just as it had always been. That changed on a Tuesday morning. "Captain, we have something on the sensors," Amy Chen said from her station. Her voice was tight with worry. "Multiple contacts. Very large. Coming from outside the solar system." Jake moved to her screen and felt his blood turn cold. Dozens of massive objects were approaching Earth at impossible speeds. They were bigger than anything humans had ever built. The computer tried to count them and failed. There were too many. "Sound the alarm," Jake said quietly. "Contact Earth Defense Command. Tell them we have visitors." Within minutes, every military base on Earth was scrambling. Defense satellites powered up their weapons. Fighter squadrons launched from carriers. The governments of the world watched their screens in growing horror as the alien fleet came closer and closer. Commander Ben Harris stood in the war room deep beneath Colorado, staring at the largest screen. He had trained his entire career for alien contact. They had protocols, plans, and procedures. First contact was supposed to be careful, diplomatic, and peaceful. This was not that. The alien ships stopped just beyond the moon. They hung in space like dark clouds, blotting out the stars. For 6 hours, nothing happened. Earth held its breath and waited. Then the message came. It wasn't sent to governments or military leaders. It was broadcast on every frequency, in every language, to every device on Earth. The voice was cold and mechanical, translated by machines that humans couldn't understand. "Primitive species of the third planet. You are now subjects of the Krillian Dominion. Surrender your world. Resistance will result in elimination. You have 72 hours to comply." The message repeated 3 times, then stopped. "Sir, what do we do?" a young officer asked Ben. Ben looked at the fleet on the screen. He had commanded armies, planned strategies, and won wars. But he had never faced an enemy like this. "We fight," he said simply. "We don't know how to do anything else." The world waited for Earth's response. President Martinez spoke from Washington, her voice steady despite the fear that gripped the planet. "To the Krillian Dominion, we are a free people. We will not surrender. Leave our world in peace, or face the consequences." The aliens answered immediately. Fire fell from the sky. The Krillian ships unleashed weapons that turned night into day. Beams of pure energy struck New York, London, Tokyo, and Mumbai. Buildings that had stood for centuries vanished in seconds. Millions of people died before they could even scream. The lucky ones were in shelters. Most were not lucky. Jake watched from Sentinel-7 as the world below burned. Amy was crying at her station, trying to contact her family in San Francisco. Jake wanted to comfort her, but there was no comfort to give. They could only watch as humanity's greatest cities turned to ash and fire. Earth's military fought back with everything they had. Fighter jets attacked the Krillian ships, firing missiles and lasers. The weapons bounced off the alien hulls like raindrops. Nuclear missiles were launched in desperation. The Krillians shot them down before they could reach their targets. Defense satellites fired their strongest weapons. The Krillian shields absorbed the energy without effort. For every alien ship that humanity damaged, 10 more appeared to take its place. The Krillians fought with cold efficiency, destroying military bases and cities without emotion or mercy. They had done this before, on hundreds of worlds. Earth was just another conquest, another resource to claim. Dr. Lisa Park worked in the ruins of the research center in Geneva. Half the building had collapsed when the Krillians struck the city. She dug through the rubble, searching for her research computer. She was a xenobiologist, one of Earth's experts on alien life. Now she had all the alien life she could handle. She found her computer still working, and pulled up the data she had managed to intercept from the Krillian broadcasts. She was good at languages, at understanding how other minds worked. The Krillian transmissions were encrypted, but patterns were patterns. She started breaking the code. What she found made her stop breathing. The Krillians had files on thousands of conquered species, detailed reports on their biology, their culture, their weaknesses. Lisa read through them with growing horror. Every species had fought, every species had lost. The Krillians were perfect conquerors, learning from each victory and growing stronger. But there was something strange in the files. The Krillians kept noting something odd about Earth. They commented on how humans kept lesser beasts in their homes and cities. They found it disgusting and confusing. Why would an intelligent species waste resources on animals? Lisa looked out the broken window. In the street below, a woman was running with her dog, heading for a shelter. A man was carrying his cat. Even in the apocalypse, people refused to leave their pets behind. The Krillians didn't understand. They had conquered hundreds of worlds, but they had never encountered anything like humanity's bond with animals. Lisa didn't know if that meant anything, but it was the only difference she could find. By the end of the first day, 3 billion people were dead. By the end of the second day, most of Earth's military was destroyed. The Krillians landed ground troops in Africa, Asia, and South America. They marched across the land, killing anyone who resisted and capturing anyone who surrendered. Jake Morrison abandoned Sentinel-7 when the Krillians finally blew it apart. He and Amy escaped in a shuttle and crashed in the forests of Oregon. They walked for 2 days, until they found an underground shelter where survivors had gathered. Commander Ben Harris relocated his command center 3 times as the Krillians hunted Earth's leaders. He was exhausted and running out of options. The counterattacks had all failed. The defenses had all fallen. Earth was losing, and losing badly. The 72-hour deadline approached. The Krillians sent another message. Final warning. Surrender now, or face complete extermination. In shelters across the world, people held each other and prayed. Some prayed to God. Some prayed to fate. Some simply prayed that it would be quick. But in the ruins and the shelters, in the burned cities, and the hidden bases, something else was happening. Dogs pressed close to their owners, sensing fear and offering comfort. Cats refused to leave. Horses in the countryside stood guard over the families that had cared for them. In the oceans, dolphins and whales gathered in strange formations, as if waiting for something. The animals of Earth were watching, and they were listening. None of the humans noticed yet. They were too busy trying to survive. But something was stirring in the natural world. Something that the Krillians, with all their technology and power, could not detect. Earth's beasts were becoming aware that their friends were in danger. Dr. Lisa Park worked through the night in the underground shelter beneath Geneva. Her eyes burned from staring at the computer screen, but she couldn't stop. She had found something important. Something that might matter. She had broken more of the Krillian code and read through their conquest records. Every species they defeated had one thing in common. They fought alone. Each intelligent species stood by itself against the Krillian fleet. Some had technology. Some had numbers. None had help from other creatures on their worlds. Earth was different. Lisa pulled up video footage from the last 3 days. In every recording, she saw the same pattern. People running from the attacks, and their pets running with them. Families refusing to leave without their dogs. Farmers leading their horses to safety. Even in the chaos, humans and animals stayed together. The Krillians found this behavior bizarre. Their reports called it inefficient and illogical. They couldn't understand why humans would risk their lives for creatures they considered inferior. Lisa thought about her own dog, Max, who had died 2 years ago. She remembered how he always knew when she was sad, how he would rest his head on her lap and refuse to move until she smiled. That wasn't inferior. That was love. She started writing a report, her fingers shaking on the keyboard. She had an idea, but it was crazy. So crazy that no one would listen. But crazy was all they had left. Above ground, in the ruins of a military base in Colorado, Commander Ben Harris was losing his war. His forces were scattered across the globe, hiding in bunkers and caves. The Krillians controlled the skies and the oceans. Every hour brought news of another city fallen, Another position lost. A young soldier brought him Lisa's message. Ben read it twice, then 3 times. He called his remaining officers together. "There's a scientist in Geneva who thinks our animals might be able to help us," he said. The room was silent. Then someone laughed. It was a bitter, exhausted sound. "Sir, with respect." "That's insane," Colonel Ryan Foster said. "Dogs and cats can't fight aliens with laser weapons." "I know," Ben said quietly. "But we're out of options. We've tried everything else. What do we have to lose?" The silence that followed was different. It was the silence of people who knew they were going to die and were willing to try anything. Professor Matt Sullivan received the message in his shelter in Boston. He was an expert on animal behavior and had spent 20 years studying how animals think and communicate. He had also been working on something secret, something the government had funded but never fully believed in: neural interfaces, devices that could connect human thoughts to animal minds. Not control, but communication. A way to ask instead of command. A way to share feelings and ideas across species. The project had been shut down 6 months ago. The military said it was too expensive and not practical. Matt still had the prototypes in his lab, buried under 30 feet of rubble. He contacted Ben Harris. "If you can get me to my lab, I can try something. No promises. But I can try." In the forests of Oregon, Jake Morrison sat with the other survivors around a small fire. Amy was sleeping, finally, after crying for hours. They had lost everything. The station was gone. Most of their crew was dead. Earth was dying. A dog wandered into their camp. It was a German shepherd, covered in dirt and limping from an injury. It should have been afraid of the strangers. Instead, it walked straight to Jake and laid down beside him, resting its head on his leg. Jake pet the dog absently, finding comfort in the simple warmth of another living thing. The dog's eyes were intelligent, watching him with an expression that seemed almost human. "You lost your family too, didn't you?" Jake whispered. The dog made a soft sound, not quite a whine. It pressed closer to Jake, as if offering protection. Katie Walsh was a dog trainer before the war. She had worked with military K-9 units, teaching dogs to find bombs and rescue people. Now she was in an underground shelter in Virginia with 30 dogs and their handlers. The dogs were restless, pacing and whining. They knew something was wrong. When Katie received the message from Commander Harris, she understood immediately. She had spent her whole life working with dogs. She knew they were smart. She knew they understood more than people thought. She had seen dogs save lives, protect children, and sacrifice themselves for their humans. If anyone could ask the animals for help, it was her. She gathered the handlers and their dogs. "I know this sounds crazy," she said, "but we're going to try to talk to them. Really talk to them. Explain what's happening. Ask them to help." One of the handlers, a tough man named Pete, who had served in 3 wars, spoke up. "Ma'am, dogs don't understand wars and aliens." "No," Katie agreed. "But they understand when their pack is in danger. And we're their pack." Professor Sullivan arrived at Katie's shelter 2 days later, carrying a box of equipment he had dug out of his destroyed lab. The neural interfaces looked like simple headbands with small sensors. They picked up brain waves and translated them into signals that animal brains could process. It was crude technology. But it worked. Katie volunteered to try it first. She placed the band on her head and knelt in front of Duke, a Belgian Malinois who had been with her for 5 years. She cleared her mind and thought about the Krillians, about the burning cities, about the people dying, about the fear and the desperation. Duke's ears perked up. His eyes focused on Katie with an intensity she had never seen before. For a moment, she felt something strange. A connection, an understanding passing between them without words. Duke barked once, sharp and clear. Then he turned to the other dogs and barked again. Every dog in the shelter stood up at once, their eyes bright and alert. Katie felt tears running down her face. "They know," she whispered. "They understand." But understanding wasn't enough. They needed a way to reach all the animals. not just the ones in front of them. They needed to send a message across the whole world. Dr. Lisa Park had the answer. "We use everything," she said over the video call. "Every radio, every speaker, every broadcast system we have left. We send out a signal on frequencies animals can hear, and we use the neural interface pattern as a base. It won't be as strong as a direct connection, but it might work." "What do we say?" Commander Ben Harris asked. Lisa took a deep breath. "We tell them the truth. We explain that Earth is dying, that we need help, that we're asking, not commanding. We tell them that we know they don't owe us anything, but we're begging them anyway. We tell them that humans and animals have been friends for thousands of years, and now we need our friends. They're animals," Colonel Foster said. "They can't fight a war." "No," Katie said. "But they can do things we can't. They can go places we can't. They can survive things we can't. And most importantly, they want to protect their families, just like we do." Ben made the decision. "Do it. Send the message. If it doesn't work, we've lost nothing. If it does work." He didn't finish the sentence. No one knew what would happen if it worked. The message was prepared over the next 12 hours. It combined human words with the neural interface patterns. It mixed sounds that animals could hear with emotions they could feel. Lisa worked on the emotional content, trying to capture the desperation and hope. Matt adjusted the frequencies for different species. Katie recorded herself explaining the situation, pouring her heart into every word. They broadcasted on every channel Earth had left. Radio towers still standing sent out the signal. Satellite systems that hadn't been destroyed carried it across the globe. Underground speakers in shelters played it. Even simple phones in people's pockets transmitted it. The message went out in waves, reaching across continents and oceans. It spoke in frequencies too high for human ears, in patterns that touched something deep in animal minds. It wasn't language in any normal sense. It was feeling and need and desperate hope. Animals of Earth, friends of humanity, we are in danger. Our world is dying. Creatures from the stars are killing us. We have fought with all our strength, but we are losing. We don't want to die. We don't want to leave you. We are asking for help. We have always tried to protect you. We have fed you when you were hungry. We have healed you when you were hurt. We have loved you without asking for anything in return. Now we are the ones who need protection. Now we are the ones who need healing. If you can hear this, if you can understand this, please help us. Not because you must, but because we are friends, because we are pack, because we are family." The message played for 6 hours straight, repeating over and over. The humans waited in their shelters, hoping for something. Anything. At first, nothing happened. Then, slowly, reports started coming in. Dogs in shelters stopped whining. They sat at attention, staring at nothing, as if listening to something humans couldn't hear. In the countryside, horses gathered in groups, standing perfectly still with their ears forward. Birds stopped flying randomly and began moving in patterns, huge flocks forming and reforming. In the oceans, dolphins and whales started singing, their calls echoing across thousands of miles. In the forests, wolves howled in unison, a sound that carried through the trees and mountains. Even insects seemed to pause, their usual chaos becoming ordered and purposeful. Katie watched Duke and the other dogs in her shelter. They were different now, more focused, more aware. They looked at her with eyes that seemed to understand everything. "They heard us," she said in wonder. "They actually heard us." Jake Morrison, sitting in the Oregon forest, watched as animals emerged from the trees. Deer, rabbits, foxes, even a bear. They didn't attack each other. They didn't run from the humans. They simply gathered, waiting. The German shepherd beside Jake stood up and walked to the edge of the clearing. It looked back at Jake once, then howled. The sound was answered by dozens of other voices in the darkness. Across the world, in every shelter and hiding place, humans watched in amazement as the animals around them changed. The fear left their eyes. The panic stopped. They became calm and purposeful. as if they had heard a call and were preparing to answer. The Krillians noticed nothing. They were too busy hunting human soldiers and claiming territory. They paid no attention to the birds and animals around them. Why would they? They were just beasts, insignificant and harmless. The Krillians were about to learn how wrong they were. The Krillian soldiers marched through what had once been Paris. Their armor made them look like walking machines, and their weapons could cut through steel like paper. They felt no fear. They had conquered hundreds of worlds. Earth was just another easy victory. Captain Zexthor led his unit down the ruined street, scanning for human survivors. His sensors detected movement ahead. He raised his weapon, ready to fire. A pigeon landed on his helmet, then another, and another. Within seconds, hundreds of pigeons descended from the sky. They weren't fleeing or scattered. They moved with purpose, swarming over the Krillian soldiers. The birds went for the sensors on their helmets, pecking at the delicate equipment. They dove at their face shields, blocking their vision. Zexthor tried to brush them away, but more kept coming. His sensors went dark, filled with static and errors. He heard his soldiers shouting in confusion. They were trained to fight enemies with weapons, not birds that came from every direction at once. Above them, larger birds joined the attack. Hawks and eagles dove from the clouds, their talons striking at communication devices and exposed wiring. The Krillians fired their weapons wildly, but the birds were too fast, too many, and too coordinated. For the first time since landing on Earth, Captain Zexthor felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Fear. In the Atlantic Ocean, a Krillian submarine factory churned out war machines beneath the waves. The aliens had placed it there to avoid human detection, building weapons and equipment far from any possible attack. The dolphins found it on the second day. Dr. Nina Foster watched from a damaged research vessel, using sonar equipment that barely worked. She saw what the dolphins were doing and couldn't believe her eyes. They weren't just swimming around the Krillian facility. They were attacking it. Pods of dolphins rammed the structure from all sides, hitting the same spots over and over. Their sonar, usually used for hunting fish, focused on weak points in the alien construction. The sound waves they generated were so powerful that they disrupted the Krillian equipment inside. Then the whales arrived. Humpbacks and blue whales, creatures that humans had nearly driven to extinction and then fought to save. They swam in formation, like a navy that had trained for years. Their massive bodies slammed into the factory supports. Each impact shook the entire structure. The Krillians inside sent out distress signals and emergency repair teams, but sharks were waiting for anyone who left the facility, not attacking randomly, but working together, driving the Krillian workers back inside. Within 6 hours, the submarine factory collapsed. The ocean reclaimed it, dragging it down to the depths where the Krillians couldn't recover it. Nina watched it happen and laughed until she cried. The whales that humanity had fought to protect were now protecting humanity in return. On the plains of Africa, a Krillian supply convoy moved across the grassland. They had sensors that could detect any weapon within miles. They had shields that could stop bullets and missiles. They were completely safe. Until the elephants came. The convoy's sensors didn't register the elephants as threats. They were just animals, after all. The Krillians ignored them, focused on watching for human soldiers. The lead elephant was an old female named Njeri by the local tribe. She had lived for 60 years, and she remembered when humans had protected her herd from poachers. She remembered the young human woman who had cared for her injured calf. She remembered kindness. Now she returned it. Njeri charged at 40 miles per hour, 6 tons of muscle and fury. She hit the lead vehicle and flipped it like a toy. Behind her, 20 more elephants followed, trumpeting their rage. They crushed vehicles under their feet, tore apart equipment with their trunks, and destroyed anything the Krillians had built. The aliens fired their weapons, but elephant hide was thick and tough. The energy beams burned them, but the elephants didn't stop. They had protected their young from lions and humans for millions of years. The Krillians were just another predator. By the time the herd finished, the convoy was scattered wreckage across the savannah. The surviving Krillians fled on foot. only to encounter lions waiting in the grass. The lions didn't hunt them for food. They hunted them for the same reason the elephants had attacked. Because their home was under threat, and the humans who had learned to live alongside them needed help. Lieutenant Sam Brooks flew his fighter jet low over the mountains of Colorado. He was one of the few pilots still alive, running from a Krillian patrol ship that had been chasing him for 20 minutes. His jet was damaged, his weapons were gone, and he was out of options. Eagles appeared on both sides of his cockpit, not one or two, but dozens. They flew in perfect formation, matching his speed exactly. Sam had flown for 15 years and had never seen anything like it. Birds didn't fly in formation with jets. It was impossible. The eagles suddenly broke away, diving toward the Krillian ship behind him. They swarmed over the alien vessel's sensors and engines, creating so much interference that the ship's targeting systems went blind. The Krillian pilot couldn't get a lock on Sam's jet. Every time he tried, the eagles blocked his sensors. Sam used the confusion to escape into a canyon. The eagles followed him, guiding him through the narrow passage. They seemed to know exactly where he needed to go, leading him to a hidden base where other survivors were gathered. When Sam landed and climbed out of his cockpit, the eagles circled overhead once, then flew away. He stood there, staring at the sky, trying to understand what had just happened. A soldier approached him. "Sir, the birds have been doing this all day, helping our pilots escape, guiding our troops through enemy territory, even attacking Krillian positions. It's like they're on our side." "They are on our side," Sam said quietly. "They always have been." In the underground shelter in Virginia, Katie Walsh worked with the dogs, using the neural interface to coordinate their efforts. The connection was stronger now, as if the dogs had learned how to use it better than the humans had. Through Duke's eyes, she could see what was happening across the city. Dogs were leading refugees to safety, finding paths through the rubble that humans couldn't see. They were detecting Krillian soldiers before the aliens could ambush human survivors. They were even finding food and water that had been buried under collapsed buildings. But they were doing more than rescuing people. They were fighting. German Shepherds and Belgian Malinois attacked Krillian soldiers, going for the weak points in their armor. They were fast and smart, using tactics that no military had taught them. They worked in packs, one dog distracting while others attacked from behind. Smaller dogs infiltrated Krillian bases, using their size to squeeze through vents and gaps. Once inside, they chewed through wires and destroyed equipment. The Krillians couldn't set up secure positions because the dogs would find a way in. Katie watched through the connection as a pack of dogs took down a Krillian soldier who had been terrorizing a shelter. They didn't kill him, but they drove him away, protecting the humans inside. When it was safe, the dogs returned to the shelter and were welcomed like heroes. "They're not just helping us," Professor Matt Sullivan said, watching the data from his equipment. "They're organizing themselves. The dogs are talking to each other, coordinating across the whole city. It's like they've formed their own military unit." In the forests of Oregon, Jake Morrison watched the transformation of the wilderness around him. The animals had always been there, of course. But now they were visible and purposeful. Wolves patrolled the perimeter of the human camp. Deer acted as sentries, their ears and eyes detecting danger long before humans could. Even small creatures like rabbits and squirrels seemed to be part of the network, carrying information through the forest. The German shepherd that had found Jake, which he had started calling Ranger, stayed by his side constantly. But Ranger wasn't just a pet anymore. He was a guardian, a scout, and a connection to the larger world of animals that had mobilized across the planet. Amy came to sit beside Jake, watching a bear walk past the camp without showing any aggression. "This is impossible," she said. "Animals don't act like this. They don't organize military operations." "They do when their family is threatened," Jake replied. "And we're family. We have been for thousands of years." In New York's ruins, rats and mice invaded the Krillian command center that had been set up in the remains of a skyscraper. The aliens didn't worry about small rodents. Their technology was sealed and protected, but rats could chew through almost anything given enough time. And they had numbers. Millions of rats. working together with a purpose that went beyond survival. They gnawed through cables, nested in equipment, and caused so much damage that the Krillians had to abandon their position. Insects joined the fight too. Bees attacked Krillian soldiers, finding the gaps in their armor and stinging repeatedly. The aliens' biology wasn't prepared for Earth's venom. Ants infiltrated their food supplies, making everything inedible. Mosquitoes spread confusion and disease wherever the Krillians tried to establish camps. Commander Ben Harris watched the reports flood in from across the globe. At first, he had thought it was just random luck, animals panicking and accidentally interfering with the Krillians. But the pattern was clear now. The animals were fighting a coordinated war. They're targeting the Krillian weak points, Colonel Ryan Foster said, staring at the tactical map. The birds hit their sensors. The sea creatures destroy their underwater facilities. The large mammals wreck their supply lines. The dogs and cats protect civilians while attacking soldiers. The insects and rodents sabotage their equipment. It's brilliant. It's like they planned it. Maybe they did, Ben said. We asked them for help. We told them what we needed. They're giving it to us. Katie's voice came over the radio. Commander, the animals are ready for something bigger. I can feel it through the connection. They're not just reacting anymore. They're preparing for a major offensive. Can we coordinate with them? Ben asked. We don't need to coordinate with them, Katie replied. They're already coordinating with us. They know where our troops are. They know what we're planning, through the neural interface, through their own senses, through something we don't fully understand. They're ready to fight alongside us, not just for us. Ben made his decision. Then let's give them something to fight for. Prepare all remaining forces for a major assault on the Krillian positions. Focus on their landing sites. If we can destroy those, we can cut off their reinforcements. Sir, we don't have enough troops for that, Foster objected. We do now, Ben said, looking at the map covered with reports of animal attacks. We have the entire animal kingdom. The message went out to every human soldier still fighting. Tomorrow at dawn, they would attack. And they wouldn't be alone. Across the world, animals seemed to sense the plan. Dogs howled, wolves sang, eagles screeched, whales called. The sound carried across continents and oceans, a war cry that the Krillians didn't understand and couldn't stop. Earth's beasts were no longer just answering humanity's plea. They were becoming an army. Dawn broke over Earth, and the war changed forever. The Krillian landing site in Germany was the largest on the planet. 10,000 alien soldiers guarded massive ships that carried weapons and supplies. Their sensors covered every approach. Their shields could stop any missile. Their commanders felt completely secure. They didn't see the wolves coming until it was too late. Hundreds of wolves emerged from the forests at sunrise. They moved like shadows, silent and fast. The Krillian sensors detected them but classified them as harmless wildlife. By the time the aliens realized their mistake, the wolves were already inside the perimeter. Behind the wolves came human soldiers, led by Colonel Ryan Foster. The animals had found paths through the sensor net, gaps in the defenses that the humans could never have discovered alone. The wolves spread out, attacking communication lines and isolated guards while the human forces struck at the ships themselves. Overhead, thousands of birds filled the sky, blocking the Krillian drones and disrupting their air support. On the ground, wild boars charged the supply depots, their thick hides protecting them from energy weapons as they destroyed crates and equipment. Foster watched in amazement as a pack of wolves coordinated their attack better than any military unit he had commanded. They flanked, retreated, and struck again with perfect timing. When a Krillian soldier fired at the humans, the wolves attacked from behind. When the aliens turned to face the wolves, the humans advanced. All teams, push forward, Foster ordered into his radio. The animals are giving us openings. Use them. The battle for the German landing site lasted 6 hours. When it was over, the Krillian position was destroyed, and 3 of their large transport ships were burning wreckage. The human casualties were lighter than anyone had expected. The wolves had protected the soldiers, warning them of dangers and drawing fire away from vulnerable positions. Foster knelt beside a gray wolf that had been injured in the fighting. The animal looked at him with intelligent eyes, panting but not showing fear. Foster reached out slowly and touched the wolf's head. "Thank you," he said simply. The wolf made a soft sound, then limped away to join its pack. Foster watched it go and understood something he had never really believed before. Humans weren't alone on this planet. They never had been. In the Pacific Ocean, Dr. Nina Foster coordinated the largest naval operation in history. Except it wasn't human ships doing the fighting. It was whales, dolphins, and sharks. The Krillians had established underwater mining operations, pulling resources from the ocean floor to fuel their war machine. They had thought the depths would protect them. They were wrong. Orcas, the apex predators of the sea, led the assault. They were smart enough to understand human hand signals and brave enough to attack creatures from another world. Nina watched from her research ship as the orcas systematically destroyed mining equipment, working together like a well-trained team. Dolphins used their sonar to find weak points in the Krillian structures, calling to each other in complex patterns that almost sounded like language. When they found a target, the whales would strike, their massive bodies delivering devastating blows. The Krillians sent submersibles to defend their operations. The sharks were waiting. Great whites, hammerheads, and bull sharks attacked in coordinated groups, ramming the vehicles and tearing at their hulls. The Krillian pilots found themselves fighting an enemy that had ruled the oceans for millions of years. Nina had spent her career studying marine life, but she had never seen anything like this. The sea creatures were communicating across hundreds of miles, coordinating attacks on multiple targets simultaneously. It was as if the entire ocean had become one giant organism, united in purpose. "They're destroying the mining operations faster than the Krillians can repair them," her assistant said, checking the sonar readings. "At this rate, the aliens will lose their entire resource supply within days." Nina smiled. Humanity had spent centuries learning to live with the ocean's creatures, respecting them and protecting them. Now those creatures were repaying that respect in the only way that mattered. In Australia, Alex Rivera worked in a hidden laboratory, developing new technology to help the animal fighters. He was an engineer who had always loved gadgets, but now he was building something incredible. The amplifier devices were small and simple. When attached to an animal, they enhanced the creature's natural abilities. Dogs could hear even better, tracking Krillian movements from miles away. Birds could fly faster and longer, carrying messages between human forces. Even insects became more effective, their senses enhanced to find enemy positions. Alex tested the first device on a falcon. The bird wore a tiny harness with the amplifier attached. When Alex activated it, the falcon's eyes seemed to sharpen. It took flight and flew higher than any falcon should be able to go, spotting a Krillian patrol that was hiding in the mountains. "It's working," Alex said excitedly. "We can make them even better at what they already do." The amplifiers were distributed to animals across the globe. Wolves with enhanced sense of smell could detect Krillian soldiers through concrete and steel. Bats with improved echolocation could map entire enemy bases in darkness. Horses with increased stamina could carry soldiers for days without rest. The Krillians started to realize they were fighting something they didn't understand. Their intelligence reports were filled with impossible accounts. Animals acting with purpose, creatures coordinating across continents, beasts that seemed to communicate and plan like intelligent beings. General Thexkar, commander of the Krillian invasion fleet, studied the reports in his command ship. He had conquered 47 worlds in his career. He had defeated species with advanced technology, superior numbers, and powerful weapons. But he had never faced anything like Earth. "How can animals be this organized?" he demanded. "They're not intelligent. They can't plan military operations." His intelligence officer, a younger Krillian named Vexatia, looked uncomfortable. "Sir, perhaps we were wrong about Earth's animals. Perhaps they are intelligent, just in ways we don't recognize." "That's impossible," Thexkar said. "We've scanned them. They don't have the brain structure for complex thought." "Then how do you explain what they're doing?" Vex Shah asked quietly. Thexkar had no answer. In all his years of conquest, he had learned to respect his enemies. But he had never respected animals. They were resources to be used, or pests to be eliminated. The idea that they could be allies, friends, or soldiers had never occurred to him. It was a blind spot that was costing him the war. Jake Morrison led his group of survivors out of the Oregon forest, guided by Ranger and a pack of wolves. They were heading to join the main human forces, traveling through enemy territory. It should have been impossible, but the animals made it possible. Birds flew ahead, warning them of Krillian patrols. Deer showed them paths that avoided enemy sensors. Bears cleared obstacles from their route. Even small creatures helped. Rabbits and squirrels acting as scouts and messengers. Amy walked beside Jake, still trying to process what was happening. "They're protecting us," she said. "Not just helping, actually protecting us like we're part of their family." "We are part of their family," Jake replied. "We've been part of it for thousands of years. We just forgot sometimes." Ranger barked softly and trotted ahead, leading them around a Krillian checkpoint. The aliens never saw the humans pass less than half a mile away. The wolves had found a route that was invisible to the alien sensors but perfectly safe for people on foot. When they finally reached the human base 3 days later, Jake found Commander Ben Harris coordinating the war from a command center carved into a mountain. The walls were covered with maps and screens, showing Krillian positions and animal movements. "Captain Morrison," Ben said, shaking Jake's hand. "Good to see you made it. We need every soldier we can get." "What's the situation?" Jake asked. Ben pointed to the map. "The animals have destroyed or damaged 70% of the Krillian ground forces. They've taken out most of their supply lines. They've made it impossible for the aliens to establish secure positions. We're actually winning." Jake looked at the map in disbelief. 2 weeks ago, humanity had been facing extinction. Now they were winning? "The Krillians still control orbit," Ben continued. "They still have their fleet. But they can't land reinforcements safely. Every time they try, animals attack the landing zones. Birds, insects, and whatever else is nearby. The Krillians are starting to retreat to their ships. So what's our next move?" Jake asked. Ben smiled grimly. "We take out their flagship. If we can kill their command structure, the rest of the fleet will fall apart. And we have a plan to do it." Katie Walsh arrived at the command center with Duke and 20 other dogs. They were all wearing Alex's amplifier devices, their senses enhanced to superhuman levels. Katie looked tired but determined. "The dogs have found something," she said. "A weakness in the flagship's shields. There's a ventilation system that the Krillians think is too small for any threat. But it's perfect for rats." Professor Matt Sullivan nodded. "We can send the rats inside with small explosives. They'll place them at critical points throughout the ship. The rats are small enough and smart enough to avoid detection." "You're going to use rats as saboteurs?" Colonel Foster asked. "Why not?" Katie replied. "We've used dogs for rescue, birds for reconnaissance, whales for naval warfare, and wolves for ground combat. Rats are perfect for infiltration." Jake thought about everything he had seen in the past weeks. Dogs leading charges, eagles guiding pilots, whales destroying bases. It all seemed impossible. But it was happening. Why not rats committing sabotage? "Do it," Ben ordered. "Coordinate with the animals. Tell them what we need. They'll understand." That night, as humans and animals prepared for the final assault, Jake sat outside the command center with Ranger. The dog had barely left his side since they met. Now, looking into Ranger's eyes, Jake understood why. They had both lost everything. They had both been alone and afraid. But they had found each other. And in finding each other, they had found hope. "Tomorrow we hit the flagship," Jake said to the dog. "It's going to be dangerous. You don't have to come." Ranger pressed against Jake's leg and made a soft sound. The meaning was clear. Where Jake went, Ranger would follow. Because that's what pack meant. That's what family meant. All across Earth, in forests and oceans, in cities and mountains, in skies and underground shelters, the same bond existed. Humans and animals, preparing to fight together for their shared home. The Krillians had come to conquer a primitive world. Instead, they had awakened something they couldn't understand or defeat. They had awakened the oldest alliance in Earth's history, the bond between humans and the creatures who had chosen to live alongside them. Dawn would bring the final battle. And for the first time since the invasion began, humanity believed they could win. The Krillian flagship hung in orbit like a dark moon, bristling with weapons and shields. General Thexkar stood on the command bridge, watching Earth below. He had lost 70% of his ground forces, his mining operations were destroyed, his supply lines were cut, and it had all been done by animals. Animals. The thought still made no sense to him. "Sir, we're receiving reports from all sectors," Vexesha said nervously. "The ground forces are requesting permission to evacuate to orbit. They say the planet is no longer safe." Thexkar's hands tightened on the railing. He had never retreated from a conquest. Never. But he was losing soldiers to creatures that shouldn't even be considered threats. Birds. Dogs. Rats. It was humiliating. "No evacuation," he said firmly. "We will break this planet's resistance. Prepare for orbital bombardment. We'll burn the surface until nothing lives." Vexesha looked horrified. "Sir, that will kill billions of humans and animals. The Empire doesn't approve of total extermination without cause. The cause is our survival," Thexkar snapped. "If we don't stop these creatures now, word will spread. Every species in the galaxy will learn that Earth defeated the Krillian Dominion. We'll look weak. We'll face rebellions on every conquered world." He was right, and Vexesha knew it. The Krillian Empire ruled through fear and reputation. If one planet could defeat them, others would try. "Charge the bombardment weapons," Thexkar ordered. "We end this now." Far below, in Commander Ben Harris's command center, alarms started blaring. The Krillian flagship was powering up its main weapons. Weapons designed to destroy entire continents. "How long do we have?" Ben asked. 30 minutes, a technician replied. "Maybe less." Ben looked at Katie Walsh, who stood with Duke and the other dogs. "Are the rats ready?" "They're in position inside the ship," Katie said. Her eyes closed as she concentrated on the neural interface. 2,000 rats, each carrying a small explosive. "They're waiting for the signal." "And they understand what to do?" Ben asked. Katie opened her eyes and smiled. "They understand perfectly. They've spent weeks eating garbage and living in sewers while humans barely noticed them. But they remember that humans also feed them, shelter them in the winter, and generally let them live in our cities. They're ready to return the favor." "Then give the signal," Ben ordered. Katie closed her eyes again and sent the thought through the neural interface. One simple message that the rats would understand. "Now. Help your family now." Inside the Krillian flagship, 2,000 rats moved at once. They scurried through ventilation shafts, crawled behind panels, and squeezed into spaces the aliens had never thought to secure. Each rat found its assigned position, places that Alex Rivera had identified as critical to the ship's systems. The rats placed their small explosive devices, shaped by human hands but delivered by animal courage. Power conduits. Shield generators. Life support. Weapon control. Engine coolant lines. Communication hubs. The Krillians never noticed. They were too focused on preparing the bombardment. Too certain that their ship was secure. They didn't understand that rats could be soldiers too. The explosives detonated simultaneously. The flagship shuddered. Lights flickered. Alarms screamed. Thexkar grabbed the railing as the floor tilted beneath him. "What's happening?" he shouted. Multiple system failures across the ship. A technician yelled back. "Shields are down to 20%. Weapons offline. Power fluctuating. Sir, something is inside the ship, sabotaging our systems. Impossible. Our security." Another explosion rocked the bridge. This one was close, just below their feet. Smoke filled the air. Krillian soldiers rushed to seal the breach. But more explosions followed, each one carefully placed to cause maximum damage. Thexkar finally understood. Rats, he said in disbelief. They sent rats to sabotage our flagship. Vexia would have laughed if the situation wasn't so desperate. Sir, shields are failing. If we stay in orbit, the humans can attack us. Thexkar made a decision he never thought he would make. Signal the fleet. All ships, withdraw to defensive positions beyond the moon. Abandon all ground forces. We're leaving. Sir, what about our soldiers on the surface? They're already dead, Thexkar said bitterly. The animals will kill them all. The Krillian fleet began to move, pulling back from Earth. On the ground, the alien soldiers who had been left behind realized they were abandoned. Some tried to fight. Most tried to flee. None succeeded. Wolves hunted them through forests. Eagles tracked them from the sky. Bears cut off their escape routes. Dogs led human soldiers to every hiding place. Within 3 days, the last Krillian ground force surrendered, surrounded by a pack of German shepherds and a platoon of human soldiers. Jake Morrison watched the surrender from the ruins of what had been Seattle. Ranger sat beside him, tongue hanging out. Looking pleased with himself, the dog had personally tracked down 5 Krillian soldiers who had been hiding in an old warehouse. We won, Amy said quietly, standing next to Jake. Jake looked at the sky, where the Krillian fleet was retreating to the edge of the solar system. The battle. Maybe. But they're still up there. They could come back. Then we'll be ready, Amy replied. And so will they. She pointed to a flock of eagles circling overhead. Every animal on Earth knows what happened. They know they're part of our defense now. The Krillians won't surprise us again. In orbit, aboard the damaged flagship, Thexkar contacted Earth on all frequencies. He was done fighting. He just wanted to understand. Humans of Earth, he transmitted. This is General Thexkar of the Krillian Dominion. We request negotiation. Commander Ben Harris took the call, surrounded by his staff and several dogs who had earned their place in the command center. This is Commander Harris. What do you want to negotiate? An explanation, Thexkar said simply. We've conquered 47 worlds. We've defeated species more advanced than yours. But we've never seen anything like this. How did you make the animals fight for you? We didn't make them do anything, Ben replied. We asked them. We told them we needed help. And they chose to help us. That's impossible. Animals don't make choices like that. Your animals don't, Ben said. But ours do. Because we've spent thousands of years building relationships with them. We domesticated dogs 30,000 years ago. We learned to work with horses. We protected whales and dolphins. We fed birds and cats. We saved species from extinction. We made them part of our families, our farms, our cities, our lives. And when we needed them, they remembered. Thexkar was silent for a long moment. We don't have that. On our world, animals are resources or threats. We never thought they could be. Allies. Then you never really conquered your own planet, Dr. Lisa Park said, stepping forward. She had been invited to the command center for this moment. You just dominated it. There's a difference. What do you want from us? Thexkar asked. Leave, Ben said simply. Leave Earth and never come back. Tell your empire that this world is protected. Not just by humans, but by every creature that lives here. Tell them that if they attack us, they won't just fight our soldiers. They'll fight our dogs, our birds, our whales, our wolves, and every other animal that calls Earth home. And if we refuse? Thexkar asked. Then the rats will visit your ship again, Katie Walsh said sweetly. And next time, they'll bring friends. The Krillian general actually laughed at that. A strange sound from an alien throat. Understood. We will leave. And we will tell the Empire what we learned here. But I have one request. What? Ben asked. May I come to the surface? Under a flag of truce? I want to see these creatures that defeated us. I want to understand. Ben looked at the others. Colonel Foster shrugged. Katie nodded. Dr. Park smiled. Permission granted, Ben said. But you come alone, unarmed, and the animals will be watching you. 2 days later, General Thexkar stood in a field in Montana, surrounded by humans and animals. Dogs sat in a perfect line, watching him with intelligent eyes. Horses grazed nearby but never took their attention off him. Birds perched in trees, silent and alert. Even small rabbits sat at the edge of the field, part of the gathering. Jake Morrison stood with Ranger, acting as one of the honor guards. He watched the Krillian general look around in wonder. "They're all watching me," Thexkar said. "They're protecting us," Jake replied. "That's what they do." Katie Walsh approached with Duke. "Would you like to meet one of our soldiers, General?" Thexkar looked down at the German shepherd. Duke looked back at him, not showing fear or aggression, just calm assessment. "He's evaluating me," Thexkar said. "Deciding if I'm a threat." "He is," Katie agreed. "Duke's a good judge of character." Canons places," Katie agreed. Judge of character. He fought in 12 battles, saved 20 human lives, and he did it all because he loves his family. She patted the dog's head. "We're his family." Thexkar knelt down slowly, making himself less threatening. Duke tilted his head, studying the alien. Then, to everyone's surprise, Duke walked forward and sniffed Thexkar's hand. "He's accepting you," Katie said softly. "He knows you're not a threat anymore." Thexkar reached out carefully and touched Duke's head. The dog allowed it, even leaning into the touch slightly. "We have nothing like this," Thexkar said quietly. "We have weapons and ships and technology. But we don't have this. This bond. This trust." "You could," Dr. Lisa Park said. "Every species can learn to live with others. It just takes time, patience, and the willingness to see animals as partners, not property." Thexkar stood up. "I will tell the Empire what I learned here. But I don't know if they'll understand. We've been conquerors for so long, we've forgotten how to be anything else. Then, maybe it's time to learn," Ambassador Claire Dixon said. She had arrived from what remained of the United Nations, ready to negotiate formal terms. "We're not asking you to stop being Krillians. We're just asking you to consider that there might be other ways to live." The negotiations took 3 weeks. The Krillians agreed to leave Earth and mark it as a protected world. They would spread word throughout the galaxy that Earth was not to be invaded. In return, Earth agreed to share some of their knowledge about human-animal bonds, hoping it might change how the Krillians saw their own world. When the Krillian fleet finally left the solar system, billions of humans watched from the ground. The animals watched too, in their own ways. Dogs howled. Wolves sang. Whales called. Birds circled in the sky. It was a sound of victory and relief. 6 months later, Earth was still rebuilding. The cities that had been destroyed were being reconstructed. The people who had died were mourned. But something had changed. Something fundamental. Jake Morrison retired from the military and moved to a ranch in Montana. Ranger lived with him, along with 3 other dogs they had rescued during the war. Amy visited often, bringing her own cat who had survived the invasion by hiding in rubble and catching rats. In the evenings, Jake would sit on his porch and watch the animals on his land. Horses, dogs, cats, chickens, even wild deer that came to graze nearby. They all lived together, in peace, just as they had fought together in war. Dr. Lisa Park ran the Institute for Interspecies Cooperation from Geneva. Scientists from around the world came to study the bond between humans and animals, trying to understand what had really happened during the war. The neural interfaces were improved and made available to everyone who wanted to communicate better with their pets. Katie Walsh trained a new generation of dogs and handlers, teaching them to use the neural interface and work as true partners. She gave speeches around the world, telling the story of how the animals had saved humanity. Professor Matt Sullivan continued developing technology to enhance animal abilities, but he was careful now. The animals didn't need to be changed, he realized. They just needed to be understood and appreciated for what they already were. Commander Ben Harris remained in the military, rebuilding Earth's defenses. But now, the defense plans included animals as official members of the armed forces. Canine units were expanded, marine mammal programs were created, even birds were trained as scouts and messengers. The world had learned its lesson. Humans were not alone on Earth, and they never had been. They shared the planet with billions of creatures who could think, feel, and choose. And when those creatures chose to help, nothing in the galaxy could stand against them. Other alien species began visiting Earth, not as conquerors but as observers. They came to see the planet where animals fought alongside their human partners. They came to learn about the bond that had defeated the Krillian Dominion. Some species laughed at the idea. Others were fascinated. A few began to wonder if they had made the same mistake as the Krillians, treating animals as inferior instead of as potential allies. On a quiet evening, Jake sat on his porch with Ranger sleeping at his feet. He thought about the day the aliens had arrived, when Earth had seemed doomed. He thought about the message Katie had sent, the desperate plea for help. He thought about how the animals had answered, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. A shooting star crossed the sky, and Jake made a wish. Not for himself, but for all the creatures of Earth, human and animal alike. May we never forget what we learned, he thought. May we never forget that we're stronger together than apart. May we never forget that when we asked for help, the beasts of Earth answered, and somewhere in the darkness, as if in response, a wolf howled. The sound carried across the mountains and valleys, a reminder that Earth was defended not just by weapons and armies, but by a bond that had existed for thousands of years, the bond between humans and the creatures who had chosen to stand beside them, the bond that had saved the world.